Through rain, snow, and scorching heat, he waited, loyal, unwavering, eyes fixed on the empty road. Days turned to years, yet no one returned. Then, one fateful evening, something changed. The old house stood at the very end of the street, a forgotten relic of a time when life still pulsed within its walls. Its white paint had faded, peeled back by the seasons, revealing the bare wood underneath, like scars on a once proud monument. The windows, covered in layers of dust and grime, reflected the golden hues of the setting sun, casting long shadows across the overgrown yard. The mailbox hung open, rusted at the hinges, and the once thriving garden was now a wild tangle of weeds, reclaiming what had been left behind. To any passerby, the house looked abandoned, just another empty shell, left to decay. But it wasn't empty. A lone figure stood in front of it, silent and unmoving, his presence both haunting and heartbreaking. Rex. A German shepherd with a thick coat of black and tan, now streaked with dirt, his fur tangled with burrs and dust. His once proud stance was still strong, his eyes still sharp, but there was something else in them now. Something heavy, something lost. He sat on the front porch, like a soldier waiting for orders, staring down the road with quiet, unshaken devotion. Waiting. He had been waiting for years. Once, this house had been filled with life. Laughter echoed through the halls, the scent of home-cooked meals drifted from the kitchen, and the sounds of footsteps, light and fast, belonging to a small boy, raced across the wooden floors. It had been a home, not just a house. It had been Rex's home, and he had not left. Rex had belonged to a boy named Danny. From the moment Danny had been big enough to reach out with chubby fingers and grab a fistful of his soft fur, they had been inseparable. Where Danny went, Rex followed. They had played together, explored together, grown together. Danny's parents, Mark and Julia, had loved Rex as much as their son did. Mark had brought him home one summer afternoon, a tiny pup with oversized paws and ears that flopped comically to the side. He had set him down on the floor in front of Danny, who was just a toddler at the time, barely able to stand on his own. "He's yours, buddy," Mark had said with a smile, watching as his son squealed in delight. Danny had named him Rex, and from that moment, they had been family. The years passed in a blur of childhood joy. Danny and Rex were always together, chasing each other in the backyard, napping in the sun, hiding under the kitchen table when a storm rattled the windows. At night, Rex would curl up beside Danny's bed, his ears always alert, his heartbeat a steady rhythm that lulled the boy to sleep. And then, one day, it all changed. Rex didn't understand why. Suitcases appeared in the hallway, boxes stacked on top of one another. The air smelled different, like dust and change, like something slipping away. Danny's small hands clung to Rex's fur tighter than usual, his face buried against his neck. "I don't want to go," he had whispered. His voice was small, fragile. "I don't want to leave you." But the next morning, they were gone. Rex had chased the car as it pulled out of the driveway, his legs moving as fast as they could, his nails scraping against the pavement. He ran until his paws ached, until his lungs burned, until the car disappeared into the horizon. But it never came back. Days turned to weeks. The food and water left in his bowl disappeared. The familiar scent of his family faded, washed away by rain, scattered by the wind. The house grew silent. And yet, Rex stayed. The neighbors noticed him, a lone dog guarding an empty home. Some tried to take him in, offering food, shelter, kind words, but Rex never followed. He would take a few bites, just enough to survive, and then return to the porch. Waiting. The seasons changed. The first winter without them was the hardest. Snow blanketed the ground, ice crusted over the front steps, and the cold bit deep into his bones. Still, he curled up by the door, his body shivering against the wind, his head resting on the wooden boards. The neighborhood children whispered about him, calling him a ghost dog, a spirit that refused to leave its home. Spring came, and with it, the scent of rain and blooming flowers. The trees budded with new leaves. The world woke from its slumber. But Rex remained the same. His eyes never left the road. Summer burned the pavement beneath his paws, the heat turning the air thick and heavy. He sought shade beneath the porch, his ears twitching at every passing car, his heart leaping with hope, only to sink again when none of them stopped. Autumn covered the ground in golden leaves, the wind carrying them in swirls across the yard. The days grew shorter, the nights longer. Another year had passed, and still Rex waited. He had become a fixture of the street, a silent guardian. Children would point at him as they walked by, parents shaking their heads, murmuring about how he was still there, how he had never left. A new family had moved in down the street, a kind woman named Sarah and her young daughter, Emily. They had tried to call to him, to coax him with treats and warm blankets. But Rex never left the porch. Sarah had sighed one evening as she watched him from her front yard. "That poor dog," she had murmured. "He's waiting for someone who isn't coming back." But Rex didn't believe that. He couldn't, because Danny had promised. "I don't want to leave you." Rex held on to those words, tucked them deep into his heart. One day, they would come back. They had to. So every night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the street, Rex would sit on the porch, his body still, his ears perked, his eyes fixed on the road, and he would wait. The wind howled through the empty streets, rattling the old wooden fence surrounding the abandoned house. The sky, once golden, had darkened into a deep shade of blue, the stars beginning to flicker in the cold night air. The streetlights buzzed softly, casting a pale glow over the cracked sidewalk, illuminating the figure of Rex, still seated on the porch, still waiting. But something was different tonight. The usual stillness of the neighborhood was interrupted by the low rumble of an approaching truck. Its headlights cut through the dark, bouncing off the broken windows of the house across the street. The engine growled, brakes squealing as it came to a slow stop just a few houses away. Rex lifted his head. His ears perked, his muscles tensed. The scent was unfamiliar. Strangers. The truck doors slammed shut, and 3 men stepped out, their heavy boots crunching against the pavement. One of them, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a thick beard, pulled a cigarette from his pocket and lit it, exhaling a cloud of smoke into the cold night. The others followed, talking in hushed voices as they made their way toward the abandoned house. Rex's fur bristled. His instincts flared with warning. For years, he had guarded this house, kept it safe even when no one else was there. He had chased off strays, barked at wandering drifters, and growled at those who came too close. This was still his home. The men didn't belong here. One of them, a wiry man with nervous hands, pulled a crowbar from the back of the truck. The tallest of the group, the one who had been smoking, nodded toward the front door. "This place is empty. No one's lived here in years. We get in, grab what's left, and get out. Fast." Rex stood. The movement was slow, deliberate. His tired bones protested, his muscles ached, but his loyalty burned stronger than any exhaustion. His amber eyes locked onto the intruders, his body tense with warning. The wiry man hesitated. "You sure it's empty?" he muttered.